Good morning. I'm kind of just reprocessing through what we want to do this morning. In light of this news, I tell you a little short story about a young couple that my wife and I met a few years ago. It's a couple from Kansas. They had moved down to Oklahoma City. Real young, energetic, passionate. Just started getting out and working with a lot of the immigrants in Oklahoma City, doing a lot of ministry among Afghan families. They were discipled by some good friends of ours while we were still overseas, and then we came back and started walking alongside of them. And they were amazing. Just really eager, soaked up everything we had to share with them. We're super excited about going overseas and serving on the mission field. We helped them through that process. We got them connected with some teams, with a great team in India that we knew of, and started them through that process. It was a long process. It was a difficult process, raising support and getting the training that they needed, the experience they needed. They landed there about a year and a half ago. And as most do, that first year was just a real struggle. Learning language, just running into problem after problem. I was able to visit them this current February, so 7-8 months ago, and sat in their home and just listen to them share of all the different struggles they'd been through, both with just the culture, sickness, a lot of sickness, adjustment, their team, just some different challenges on their teaming dynamics, trying to find partners, it was just a hard time of them just really opening up and expressing, but we got to spend some time. I was there with a small team of the four of us, prayed over them, and since that time, slowly things began to really open up for them. They started seeing their focus on Muslims, and the place where they live, there has been some Hindu background people come to faith. There's been some really exciting fruit in that area, but just nothing among the Muslim population. Many of you may not know, India is the third largest Muslim country in the world. I know when we think of India, we think of the Hindu nation, but there are a lot of Muslims in India. Where we lived, it was around 30-35%. Where they're at, it's closer to 20-25%, but still a lot. And they had one of their language helpers come to faith that was Muslim, and that was a huge breakthrough. Slowly, they started seeing a few more come to faith. In the last few weeks, I've seen 2 reports of an entire families coming to faith and getting baptized. So it's just been like this exciting breakthrough. And then yesterday morning, I woke up to the news that they were trying to leave the country and were denied exit. And something was stamped in their visa, and that's a pretty big deal. And so they were kind of in panic mode and decided, let's fly to another city and try to leave from there. Surely they don't talk to each other. Maybe this was a fluke. Well, they flew to another city and they were again denied exit. And so I lost an hour and a half of sleep last night, just texting, messaging back and forth with them, with their team leader, trying to help them figure out what to do and how to go through the process to register with the government. Once you do that, then you're under their spotlight. Like, they're going to see everything you do. They're on a business visa, so their business will be scrutinized. And I didn't know this, I would have advised them against it, but they're on a visa that's connected to several other missionary families. So once one family gets tagged, it connects them all. So all that to say, I walked in this morning feeling pretty heavy, and just thinking about just how limited our time is. Like, thinking in terms of like missionary service, like we would always try to think in terms of like, okay, we've got one term, like kind of this urgency, one-term urgency. We never know when our visa might get denied, or there may be some kind of medical issue, or we suddenly have to leave the country. You just never know. So we want to always live with urgency, asking what's it going to take to see our people reach? How can we make the most of each and every day to impact lostness in the place where the Lord's called us? And then, of course, I find out this morning about this sweet family and the loss there. And once again, it's like, just another reminder that our days are numbered. We don't know. Tomorrow's not promised for any of us. And so this isn't what I had originally planned, but I feel like it would be good for us in this moment to just take some time and do a little self-evaluation, and also do kind of our church evaluation, if you will. I know many of us in this room are in church leadership, and it takes up a lot of our time, a lot of our energy, just keeping things going, right? Just managing staff, managing the people that are coming in our doors. You know, we're more firefighters than pastors, it feels like, just putting out fires constantly and dealing with all the issues that come with that. And it's never intended, but oftentimes we, over time, can become very inward focused because of all the time and energy it takes. But I just want us to think about our own churches and the communities where our churches are located, even personally. What kind of impact is your church making on your community? If next week you had to close the doors of your church, would your community even notice? Would anything be missing? What kind of, and just thinking about, one of the questions we ask is how many people today in your people group have heard the gospel? It's just this constant reminder. I know a lot of missionaries might put that on their mirror or put it in a place where they see it. How many people in your people group have heard the gospel today? So let me ask you guys this. In the communities where you live, I don't know what your focus is, but hopefully you have kind of a focus area. Maybe it's a zip code or a portion of the city, or it's your town that you're in. How many people in your town and your zip code have heard the gospel today? And what are you as a church doing to impact that? And it may be you and your church getting out and hitting the streets or talking to people, engaging the lost. And it may be more than what you can do, depending on the size. Are you partnering with other churches in your city? Are you just doing things to make an impact? And again, such an impact that if you guys were suddenly not there, you know, what kind of impact would that have? So I want to kind of follow Travis's lead. I like doing things more in workshop, interactive style. I'd love us just to chat around our tables. And if you're at a table with like 2 or 3, maybe 2 tables joined together, so there's 5 or 6 people, and just talk about what are some things that you as a church are doing right now. And we don't have time for like long, every single thing, but just kind of what are we doing to impact our community? And what are some things that we could do to maybe have a greater impact? I just want to start that conversation. There won't be time for a lot of depth, but I think that'll kind of get our wheels spinning as we're processing. And also just kind of that cross-pollination thing, like we're learning from others, how they are impacting their community. So I'm going to just pause probably about 7 or 8 minutes. It's not a long time, but just have some conversation around that. And then I'll come back and we'll do something else. All right, go ahead and wrap up. Finish what you're saying, but wrap up here in a minute or so. Yeah, as you finish up, go ahead and maybe turn your chairs around, look this way, I'll know you're done. Awesome. So a lot of times when churches talk about doing more evangelism, the normal thinking, I'm not saying this is you guys, but the normal thinking is, okay, we need a program, right? We're kind of program-centric in the West, in the way we do church. So what can we do? What program can we bring in? So the challenge, though, is it's not just about a set-aside program or just inviting in a specialized evangelist to speak or to do a conference or a quick little training, but how do we change the DNA of our church so that we, as a body of believers, are regularly talking about, that we're regularly sharing our faith as we're out in community, that we're regularly celebrating not only victories, but even just people taking that first step of faith and going for it, that we are providing space for that, that it's just, you know, no matter what's been prepared for the preach, for the sermon that Sunday morning, it just comes out as part of each and every sermon, the importance of impacting our neighbors, that as we end our service, we are sent out to impact your communities. It's just something that's heard and talked about. It's part of our prayer gatherings that we're praying for the lost. We're praying for specific names of people we know that are far from God that need Christ. And it just becomes a part of our small group gatherings. It's part of our large group gatherings. And that's a whole nother maybe level to get to. And it is hard to change DNA, but it can be done. That was kind of the assignment we were given at our church in Oklahoma City. And I shared a little bit yesterday about that, is how do we bring some of this overall DNA in. And so we did just start trying to make it a regular thing where we talked about it, where we got to share stories. I mentioned, just giving opportunity, like setting aside time. Our rhythm was every 2 Saturdays a month, we had 2 hours in the afternoon set aside. That seemed to be the best time for most people. I don't know if you know this, there's not one time in the week that's good for everybody. But that seemed to be the best time for our group to get together. We'd usually take 15, 20 minutes, maybe review something we had taught, a tool, or just kind of spend a little bit of time talking and planning. We had actually mapped out the zip codes. That was our target. We were going to try to reach our zip code, about 9,500 homes in that area. And we actually gave out maps to each team of 2, and they would go and knock on doors. We'd go up to apartment complexes, and we would just knock on the door and have a conversation. Hey, how are you? Sorry to bother you. My name's Scott. This is my friend Brian. We were just out in the community today. We go to this church right over here. I'm sure you've probably seen it maybe. And we just thought we'd get out today and meet some of our neighbors, get to know you, kind of find out if you have any prayer needs, because we would love to pray for you, or if there's anything we could do to help serve you. And that was my introduction. Everybody kind of had their own, but just whatever was natural. And again, I said this yesterday, but the person's at the door talking, the other person's just praying, asking God for words. We had a lot of healings. If somebody maybe shared about medical or health needs they had, just praying for healing. We saw a lot of immediate healings happening. We saw a lot of accurate words of knowledge that led. It was a common thing when we'd come back. We always left time at the end to come back together and share stories of what happened. And it was always faith building. So you're just kind of building on top. Before we'd go out, we'd often just share stories of something that happened. We try to share recent stories, something that just happened recently, where someone came to faith or somebody was healed. And it just builds up our faith. And so just try to think through ways, even within your own churches, that you can bring that in. And when we would go, and we did this in India, we'd travel around to a number of the New Frontiers Commission Sphere churches around India and just train. And one of my goals when I was there for a weekend, we'd do a Friday night and Saturday training, was looking for someone within that church that would be the champion. And it usually wasn't the senior pastor. Nothing against senior pastors, but who's that person in your church that's just super passionate, is going to take this thing and run with it? And that's the person I wanted to work with. That's the person I wanted to coach and help them to lead their church. So just even be thinking within your own churches, who would that person be? That champion who is really into this thing, and how can you help build them up to lead out and lead your church in outreach and evangelism? So, hey, we got some time. We're going to do something a little different. I'm going to share a little bit about myself, and then we're going to practice one quick little tool. There was a time in my life when I was, I heard a chuckle over here. There was a time in my life, if anyone knows this, when I was really depressed and just had no purpose or no direction. And right before I turned 17, I encountered God in a very real way. And I began to follow after Jesus. I repented of my sin, turned, and began to walk with him. And ever since that time, I've had such purpose and such joy and hope in my life. Do you have a story like that? Okay, that was an example of a 15-second testimony. So did you know you could share your testimony in 15 seconds? Some of you maybe have heard this before, but this is a fun little thing. Sometimes what we often hear is, how do we start? People are like, I want to get out and talk to people, but I don't know how to start. So this is just one of those things that is a great tool that you can use, and it's fun to learn, is how do we share our testimony in a quick setting? Sometimes you don't have a lot of time when you're checking out at the grocery store, but this is a neat little thing you can do, or you just see somebody on the street. And so I'm going to go through mine again, and then I'm going to help you learn your 15-second testimony. We're going to practice. So there was a time in my life when I was depressed. I really had no purpose, no direction in life. But then I met Jesus, and he radically changed my life. I repented of my sin. I began to follow after him. And ever since that time, I've had such joy and hope and purpose. Do you have a story like that? All right, so what I want us to do now is, and I don't have, sometimes we'll do a slide, but I want you to think of 2 words of what your life was like before Christ. Kind of like I said, 2 or 3. I was depressed, had no direction. It could be a word or a short phrase. What are 2 things that would describe who you were before Christ? Now, let me pause right there. My wife, she was born again, she was saved. It was a genuine salvation experience when she was 6 years old. And up until that point, she hadn't dealt drugs or been a prostitute or done any of that stuff. So she doesn't have like a super awesome testimony of her life before Christ. But she does talk about when I was young, I was really going after like success. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be the top student in school. That was the most important thing in my life. But ever since Jesus changed my life, he's given me a new purpose and a new direction. And the thing that I get most passionate about now is telling people about him and how their life can be changed. And so that would be a version of her short 15-second testimony. So take some time. What are 2 words that describe yourself before you met Christ? And then think about like that time of meeting Christ. I turned from my sin. I began to follow him, right? And then afterwards, what are 2 words that would describe how your life is different? How your life is different. What's changed? And oftentimes there may be opposite words of what you had said before. And then you always want to end with some kind of like question back to them. Do you have a story like that? That's the one. It's good to memorize this. You don't have to say it this exact way. But start with, there was a time in my life, right? Those 2 words before Christ. I met Christ, began to follow him. The 2 words that describe yourself after, and then do you have a story like that? I hope you have your words either written down or in your head, because we are going to practice this all together. And there are a lot of people in here. Okay, which is good. Here's what I normally do, and it may be hard to do in here, so we won't do it. And it's a lot of fun, but it would take a while because of the number. We line everybody up in 2 lines, and you turn and face the person across from you. And I say, this side, ready, go. And you've got 15 seconds to tell the person across, and then we do it the other way. And then 1 line rotates so that everybody moves over 1. We're not going to do that, but I would like us to just maybe turn back to our tables, or not our tables, just find a partner. Let's all stand up, actually. We all look kind of solid. Let's stand up, find somebody, and decide who's going to go first, quickly. And we're going to do this several times, okay? So be ready to move around. We're going to be moving around, finding new partners. Let me get my little timer set on my phone. I'll be kind and give you 20 seconds the first time. Okay, whoever's first, on your mark, get set, go. There was a time in my life. Time. That was it. That was 20 seconds. Okay, now we're going to switch. Now the other person, get ready. Begin. Time. That's it. Time. All right. Find a new partner. Move around the room. You have to go, try to go more than 10 feet from where you were. Just move around is the point. Move around a little bit. Find somebody on the other side of the room. It's fine if you've got somebody. Okay. Figure out who's going first. This time you have 18 seconds. All right, ready? Person 1, begin. All right, that's time. Okay, second person, ready? Begin. Time. Very good. Now, for 15 seconds, new partner. New partner. We're moving quick. Find a new partner. All right. Figure out who's going first. Decide. Okay, person one, ready, begin. Time. How'd you do? All right, switch it up. The second person, ready, begin. Time. Time. Okay. All right, one more time, one more partner. One more partner, this will be the last one. Give you a minute to wander around, find somebody new. Still got a few wanderers. This is not musical chairs, we're not removing seats as you go. Find a partner, figure out who's number one. Okay. All right, number one person, ready, begin. Time. Time. Okay. All right, this is a little different. If you were listening, give a little feedback to that person. How's it going? Do you feel like if you were like not a churchgoer, would you have followed all their vocab? Was there too much churchy talk? I mean, I don't know. Just give them a little feedback. Hopefully it's positive, encouraging. Hey, that was great. You know, give them a little feedback. Anything that would be helpful or clarifying. All right. Okay, we're gonna now, person number two, get ready. On your mark, begin. Time. Time, give them a little feedback. Little feedback and then make your way back to your seat. Go ahead and get your seats. We got a little bit more time before our break. All righty. No one's moving. Please sit down. You guys are too relational in this group.
Not me.
Is that a thing? It's like the word. All right, I would like 3 volunteers who will share their 15-second testimony to the group. That was quick.
Do I have to stand up?
You consider stand, whatever.
Okay.
Listen up.
All right. Are you going to time me?
No, you're good.
Okay. There was a time in my life where I was broken from the pain of my past and I was depressed from it too. And then I met Jesus and he started putting me back together and healing the parts of me that needed healed, and he brought light into every dark place. Do you have a story like that?
I only talk about 2 words a minute, so I don't know if I can do that.
5 seconds.
There was a time in my life where I experienced a lot of emptiness and lacked meaning. And I had an encounter with Jesus Christ, and he gave me meaning and hope and filled my life with joy. Do you have a story like that?
One more? Thank you. One more?
Growing up, I felt like my daily experience was I just need to long for something else. And if I just had this, I would finally be content. But then I had experience with Jesus where for the first time in my life, I felt at peace and I didn't have to do, I could just be. Have you ever experienced a peace like I have?
Love that. Make it your own. That's good. We teach that. There was a time in my life, and do you have a story like that? That's just kind of a good outline, but I love how you made it your own. When we, around 2017, I think it was, my wife and I and our 4 kids moved to London. We were there for about a year. We're part of Crown Church in West London, kind of near Uxbridge, Hillingdon Borough. And we were doing some of this stuff. We would gather on Saturday mornings. We'd have some muffins and coffee and tea, and we would do maybe an hour of training. And we'd start off sharing testimonies of things that happened the week before. Sorry. We would, do a little bit of training, and then we'd go out 2 by 2. Sometimes we'd go up to High Street where the main market is. Sometimes we'd go to the community around. There was also a university campus nearby we could walk to. So we'd do something different each time, but we just got into this pattern. There was a family, actually an American missionary couple in the church, and they would go out on Saturday mornings and distribute Bibles in the market. And so a few times we would join them. And it was a cool ministry. They had a table set up. They'd gotten permission, and they'd had New Testaments. And so we'd join them. They'd have like 2 big boxes of Bibles, and they'd stack them on a table. And we would just kind of spread out, and as people walked past, hey, would you like a free copy of God's Word? Would you like a copy of the Bible? Most people said no and walked past, but occasionally someone would take one, thank you, and just keep going. And they were getting the Word of God out. There was a lot of Bibles that were being given away, but there really wasn't much conversation happening. There wasn't much engagement. And so after doing that a couple times, I met with them. I said, hey, let's figure out a way that we can actually engage people a little bit and talk to them. Let's think of a question we can ask them right as they come to get their Bible. And the one I came up with, and I said, you can do whatever is comfortable. I said, as they go to take the Bible, say, oh, have you ever read the Bible before? Just ask them something that causes them to pause for a quick second. And then I'd like to train our people that are doing it in this 15-second testimony. It's a real easy thing. But how can we go from that and then listen to them, have some conversation, and then share a quick testimony and turn it in kind of back on them and see where they're at? Well, we didn't give out nearly as many Bibles after that. But what was awesome was as I would look around, it was like groupings of conversations happening that weren't happening before. And I won't say we had at least one salvation every Saturday, but it was probably every other on average. We had someone come to faith. There was a coffee shop just right there nearby, and we set up a time. I think it was Sunday afternoon, I don't remember honestly, but a time where we would meet them in the coffee shop. There was like an upstairs area with a big table. We'd get in there early and reserve it and have it for ourselves. And come join us. We're just going to spend some time getting into God's Word and reading the Bible together. So we'd love for you to come join us. So just implementing, I say that story to talk about, first of all, how a way that we use this 15-second testimony in part of our ministry, but also in this idea of how do we take a ministry that we're already doing that maybe is blessing people, but how do we take it a step further so that we're getting into some gospel conversation, we're engaging people, and then we're providing them a place where we can really get some discipleship and some Bible study with them, or whatever it is you're going for. So again, think through some of the ministries you all are doing and how can we take those to the next level. Our church in Oklahoma City, we had about 25 local Christian ministries we were supporting. A lot of, we had some drug rehabilitation centers, we had some pregnancy centers, and it's probably, you guys have a lot of the same stuff, a legal counsel for poor. So we decided we were gonna go in and try to train all of them. We haven't trained them all, but we tried to train them all in how to share the gospel, how to get into some of these spiritual conversations. And yeah, it was really cool. We've been hearing a lot of testimonies, especially out of this one pregnancy center. They've had a number of women come to faith just by training their workers there in how to kind of lead into that conversation. So again, kind of going back to what I said, be thinking through in your own churches, what are some things you guys as a church can do to maybe take things further where you're engaging your community? What are some things you can do on a regular basis, whether that's scheduling in times for planned outreach and evangelism? And then what are some ways that you can be getting those things in front of the church, hearing those testimonies? I briefly mentioned this yesterday, and I'll just end with this. Or if you guys have questions, I can take those too. But we set up a GroupMe group. Now, there already was, and I never even heard of GroupMe when we were in India until we got back. I don't know, do you guys use GroupMe a lot? That's what people in Oklahoma City were using. So we're like, all right. And there was already a group that was started. I think there were 20 people in it. And it was mostly the guy leading the thing that would just say, hey, we're going to be gathering at the park on this Sunday afternoon. Come join us. And we're going to try to talk to people. There really weren't much engagement. So we kind of came in, we're like, hey, let's kind of rebrand this thing and really promote it and start sharing stories. And really, like, when we get back together and tell the stories after we've gone out, let's, like, before we leave, like, okay, everybody jump on our GroupMe, let's just add those in. And as people started reading these stories, like church members slowly began growing. Well, I think we had about 280 in the group. And I didn't give this part of my story. We had a church split, so I'm not at that church anymore. But at the end, there were about 280 people in that group. And it was like pretty much every day there was something in there. And I did have to police it a bit because people want to just throw in random prayer requests, which that sounds bad. They weren't random to them, but we were trying to keep it focused on like stories of opportunities to share the gospel or stories of when we did engage somebody. Often it was, I prayed for my waitress. Had an opportunity at my kid's school to share with one of the other moms. I mean, just different things like that are regularly in there. And if I had time, I would just share from this week. It's just a constant flow. There's no way I could read through. I think there have been like 25 entries this week of just different stories from this new GroupMe group that we've started up at our current church. I don't know, I didn't plan ahead of what I would read, but there's just, I'm just picking one. This is Kyle's. Tonight, Ronnie and I were led by God to talk with 4 guys standing outside a bar by the open trunk of their car. A couple were smoking weed. We stopped and started talking with them. They quickly and quietly closed their trunk. I did not plan this. This is a good one. Ronnie later told me an AK-47 was in the trunk. Sorry. I went through the 3 circles. It's one of our gospel sharing tools. A couple guys walked away, 2 stayed, 1 stayed longer for more talking about God. Now he, the man, could ask God to prove himself to him in a way that convinces him. This is kind of long. I guess I'll finish this one. Then God led Ronnie and me to 3 homeless people. We had a long, deep conversation with them about the brokenness in the world, which they knew well, how much God loved them, and how they could believe in and turn to him away from their sin. We also prayed for God to give them a good, safe place to sleep tonight and to do that for his glory. That's one entry. I'm trying to just pick one that's not as long. Some of these, I do tell them not to give every detail. The AK-47 is pretty cool, though. Paul Crone and I spoke with, I shouldn't give names, I guess, Nathan and Jill, who have just moved to Oklahoma from Texas. So Jill can attend a local university for her degree. They engage freely and are waiting to find a church. They are believers. We prayed for them. So we do talk about when we meet believers, we're still going to share with the gospel with them and teach them how to share the gospel. So everybody you meet can be taught and trained how to share the gospel. You're either sharing the gospel with a lost person or you're training a saved person how they can share the gospel. So we're always engaging people no matter where they're at. Anyway, time's up, but there's a lot of stories. You're welcome to read through them if you want. But it's just like daily. When you hear this, when your church members are reading these stories daily and they're coming in throughout the day of people engaging the lost in your community, it kind of spurs you on, right? It encourages you, it grows our faith, and it just kind of multiplies. It just gets more and more over time. And so that's just an example of a way to try and get in and really impact the DNA of your church such that like it becomes a thing. Like we're excited, we praise God, but we're not surprised when someone was healed, when someone came to faith. We're not like, oh my goodness, how could that have happened? Like, yeah, this is a thing God's doing. So.